Things are about to get really bad for Donald Trump. I need not remind you that any crimes he's about to commit, any election crimes he's been committing this year, especially wire fraud, raising money under false pretenses, all of those crimes are subject to prosecution by Special Counsel Jack Smith, and they do not fall under the protective umbrella of presidential immunity. Donald Trump is committing these crimes. He will be committing these crimes as a private citizen. His immunity only extends to crimes he committed performing official acts as president inside the Oval Office. It's November 5th, 2024, Election Day. There is now private talk inside the Trump campaign indicating Trump knows it's all slipping away from him. There is concern among Trump staffers that his speeches are disjointed ramblings from a 78-year-old man clearly suffering from serious cognitive decline. Despite admonitions from his two top aides, Trump still goes off script, refuses to stick to the issues voters care about. Instead, he goes off on reveries of revenge and vindication. Trump is already calling this election stolen and rigged. I'll go over what he's being told and what Kamala Harris knows this morning. I can assure you this is playing out exactly as I said it would, where the race reveals itself in the final 48 hours. You can see it on Donald Trump's face. He knows. He knows. You can hear it in his speeches. Trump told his crowd in Pittsburgh last night it will be their fault if he loses. Trump said, the only way we can blow it is if you blow it. Trump, in the final stretch, has been playing to smaller and smaller crowds that get even tinier as he keeps them waiting anywhere between 2 to 3 hours. He wrapped up the election, keeping his crowd in Grand Rapids, Michigan, waiting more than 2 hours. This is not how you win. Nearly 80 million Americans voted before Election Day. I went over this on the last show. All the early voting favors Kamala Harris. But unless this is a massive wave election, and it might be, it still, right now, comes down to Pennsylvania, where more than 70% of the electorate has yet to cast its ballot. Steve Bannon, Trump's 2016 campaign manager, fresh out of prison and back on his podcast. Steve Bannon told Newsweek yesterday that Donald Trump's ground game has completely fallen apart in Pennsylvania. Bannon says he's not optimistic. For the past 2 weeks, we have heard nothing about Trump's ground game other than how disastrous it's become ever since he outsourced it all to Elon Musk, who is accusing canvassers of fraud. He says they're faking the number of doors they actually knocked on, and he's threatening not to pay them. Meanwhile, canvassers working for Musk complain of substandard working conditions. They say they've been thrown into the back of U-Hauls with no seat belts, let alone seats, and they are being driven around by suspicious people who are threatening their safety and withholding payment for lodging and food. Elon Musk tried to host a teletown hall on Twitter last night, couldn't do it. Technical difficulties. Trump has run a very undisciplined campaign. It's not just his speeches, it's his strategy. He's chasing states he can't possibly win. J.D. Vance campaigned in Derry, New Hampshire on Sunday, insisting he and Trump will flip New Hampshire red. And then a new A-plus poll coming out of Dartmouth University late last night shows Kamala Harris beating Donald Trump in New Hampshire by, are you ready? 28 points. 28 points. Actually, it's not an A-plus poll. It's actually a new poll out of Dartmouth. Okay? What does that, but 28 points, what does that tell you about the rural district of Maine, which is expected to go red? We always expect Maine, the rural parts, to go Maine. Maine is not a winner-take-all. Trump was expected to grab one electoral vote in upper rural Maine. What does this poll coming out of New Hampshire and that blockbuster poll coming out of Iowa tell us? You can see it on the faces of Trump's top campaign operatives, who are already leaking to the press that this is a lost cause. For the first time, there is talk of Nebraska in play for Kamala Harris. The only good news for Trump: Joe Rogan, in the waning hours of the campaign, officially endorsed him for president. But remember, Rogan also endorses horse paste as a remedy for COVID. Liz Cheney appeared on ABC's The View Monday, where Whoopi Goldberg said Kamala Harris should nominate Cheney to be America's next attorney general. Remember when we used to listen to actual journalists? Rudy Giuliani said he is considering a run for mayor of New York City in 2025. Rudy's also considering growing back all his hair in 2025 and having someplace to live other than a prison cell. Axios reports that over the weekend in the 7 key battleground states, 90,000 Harris volunteers knocked on 3 million doors. A ground game. Ground games in battleground states are the difference between 1 and 3 percentage points. Trump has 0 ground game. Over the weekend, 90,000 Harris volunteers knocked on 3 million doors in 7 key battleground states. Among those volunteers, the wife of Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, who crashed the economy in 2008 and is the single largest investor in fossil fuel. But his wife is knocking on doors for Harris. The Trump campaign seems to barely exist here. Those are the words of David Graham, reporting from North Carolina for The Atlantic magazine yesterday. Graham wrote, simply put, the Trump campaign seems to barely exist here. The one thing Donald Trump had was the adoration of his crowds. He chased them foolishly in states he had no chance of ever winning. Places like Virginia over the weekend, New Mexico last week, California last month. By all accounts, in the key battleground states, Kamala Harris is filling auditoriums while Trump's crowds get smaller. In the final 48, Trump's rooms are as empty as his promises. Trump kicked off his final day of campaigning in Raleigh, North Carolina, playing to a half-empty crowd with no lines outside waiting to see him. Take a look at this. It's the crowd just moments before Trump took the stage Monday for his rally in Raleigh, North Carolina. A rally in Raleigh. More like an empty Raleigh in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the day before the election. He should be filling these rooms, but he can't, and it's why he campaigned over the weekend in Virginia, where he doesn't stand a chance of winning, but at least he can draw a crowd. He's a novelty in Virginia. It's why he campaigned a week ago inside Madison Square Garden in New York City, but he's not going to win New York City. He's not chasing votes, he's chasing crowds, because he can't draw crowds in the states he needs to win. He is seeing it with his own eyes. It's a bad episode of The Twilight Zone. He's watching it all unfold before him in slow motion. He's tired, and America's tired of him. He used to feed off the mass hysteria he was once able to create, but it no longer exists, and so he's starving. Alan Rupar reports that the Trump campaign in the final 48 began ordering everyone at the rallies to gather in front of the stage to create the illusion that the room was packed. David Korn from Mother Jones posted this photo Monday of a Trump rally in Reading, Pennsylvania, half full, 10 minutes before it started. Here is CNN reporting from the Trump rally in Reading, Pennsylvania at 2 p.m. Eastern yesterday.
The turnout today so far for this event is quite thin. There is a lot of empty seats left in this arena, and Donald Trump is now supposed to speak in the next hour here. So I'm not saying that's a sign about what we can expect in Pennsylvania by any stretch or in this county, but Donald Trump has built his brand around his ability to turn out large crowds. And so far in the stops today in North Carolina and here in Reading, it is noticeably thin here.
Live by the crowds, die by the crowds. This race will be decided by suburban women. Here is Donald Trump during his half-empty speech in Reading, Pennsylvania, with Women for Trump seated behind him. Here he is courting the female vote by singing the praises of heavyweight champion Mike Tyson.
Mike's been through a lot, but he could fight. Let me tell you, that guy could fight. But can you imagine Mike? Oh, he says, put Mike in the ring with Kamala. That would be interesting.
Put Mike in the ring with Kamala Harris. Here is J.D. Vance in Atlanta, Georgia, proving that just like Donald Trump, he too knows how to court the female vote. J.D. Vance knows all the buzzwords that signify he and the entire Republican Party respect women.
But in 2 days, we are going to take out the trash in Washington, D.C., and the trash's name is Kamala Harris.
So smart. That's how you get women to vote for you, by calling Kamala Harris trash. Well, obviously, Trump's campaign is worried that he's wandering off message in the final minutes of the campaign. The people at the very top told him before he took the stage yesterday in Reading, Pennsylvania, that he had to stick to kitchen table issues. So Trump took that to mean he should discuss the French fries at McDonald's.
I have to say, those French fries are really good when you get them right out of that fat or whatever the hell they cook them with, fat. I don't know if it's good for you, but they are really good.
He doesn't know if the fat in the fryer is good for you. By the way, on the campaign trail yesterday, Trump said he's going to reconsider vaccines. He says he's going to outlaw several vaccines. But he's not sure if the fat at McDonald's is good for us. ABC News reports that within 5 minutes of Trump's speech Sunday in Kinston, North Carolina, supporters began walking out on him. The New York Times reports that Donald Trump brags about crowd size right in front of sparsely attended audiences. He will lie, claiming people are lining up around the block to get in, while at the same time, parts of the auditorium are roped off, pushing those who did show up to come see him. They come up front, come up front. Here is Donald Trump's very first White House spokesman on his very first day in office. This would be Sean Spicer telling his very first lie about Trump's sparsely attended inauguration.
This was the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period, both in person and around the globe.
You are a liar, period. 600,000 lies later, here is Vice President Kamala Harris Sunday night in East Lansing, Michigan. And by the way, this happens everywhere. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was in Kinston, North Carolina, slurring his speech, his voice hoarse, his performance without any energy, lethargic. Here he is reciting his greatest hits like he's reading The Cat in the Hat. Watch at the end as the crowd barely applauds as he, his speech, and his campaign completely peters out.
And together we will make America powerful again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America healthy again. We will make America strong again. It's going to be so strong. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. Thank you very much, North Carolina. And God bless you all. God bless you. Go and vote. Thank you, Mike. Great. Very happy. Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody.
Just quiet. Just barely hearing cheers. Before wrapping it up, an exhausted Donald Trump forgot he was in North Carolina. He thought he was in Pennsylvania and introduced David McCormick, the Republican hedge fund manager who is running for Bob Casey's Senate seat in Pennsylvania. Trump has no idea where he is. Here he is thinking he's in Pennsylvania when in fact he's in North Carolina.
You have one of the best of all right here, David McCormick. You know that. Where's David? Is he around someplace?
No, he's not.
We just left him. He's a great guy.
You're senile. J.D. Vance, speaking in Aston, Pennsylvania, said, "The difference between Donald Trump and the Democratic woke mob is Donald Trump isn't about canceling people. He's not about censorship."
But you know something that Donald Trump will never do? Donald Trump will never go out there and say that his fellow citizens should be censored or silenced for disagreeing with him.
No, they should be shot for treason. That's what he says. He literally said General Mark Milley should be shot for treason. Donald Trump has repeatedly called Adam Schiff the enemy from within and has said the military has to be brought in to take care of people like Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi. Here is Trump at that rally telling voters the enemy is within. He's saying it's not Russia, it's not China, it's not ISIS, it's not Al-Qaeda, it's Democrats. But he's not censoring anybody.
For the past 9 years, we have been fighting against the most sinister, corrupt forces on earth. With your vote in this election, you can show them once and for all that this nation does not belong to them.
This nation does not belong to us. Trump is pushing his own strain of isolationism. He's promising to stay out of Ukraine and NATO, and he's promising to put tariffs on all foreign imports while halting the flow of immigrants into our nation. Trump is attempting to build an economic and military moat around the United States. Here he is unveiling his plans to bring jobs to Macon, Georgia, by investing in a missile defense shield, a Maginot Line, like the French had. He's talking about investing in a missile defense shield to protect us from anyone who wants to attack. And he says he's got the right guy to put in charge of all of it.
We will build a missile defense shield, all made in the USA, wrapped around our country to defend ourselves and our country. It's all going to be made in the United States, a lot of it in your great state. We'll put Herschel Walker in charge of that little sucker, okay? And we're going to do that. It's so important, you know.
Yeah. You all remember Herschel Walker, the NFL player who ran for Senate in Georgia 2 years ago and lost to the incumbent, Senator Raphael Warnock. Herschel Walker isn't just opposed to raising the minimum wage. During his campaign 2 years ago, he said we should get rid of the minimum wage entirely. Here is Herschel Walker in Macon, Georgia, attempting to introduce Donald Trump.
And it is time for it to stop, and it stopped on Tuesday when we get to the polls and we vote for my friend and your friend, Donald Trump Jr. Donald Trump, Donald J. Trump.
Terrific, terrific. Yes, yes. I will say this for Herschel Walker. When he lost 2 years ago, he immediately conceded and congratulated Raphael Warnock, and that says a lot about him. Doesn't say enough, but it does say something about him. I was moved by Herschel Walker's concession speech 2 years ago because you know They wanted him to claim election fraud, and he wouldn't go there. Donald Trump is a very serious candidate. He's going to put Herschel Walker in charge of our nation's missile defense shield. And here he is telling voters in Pittsburgh last night he's going to put Dana White, the guy who owns UFC, he's going to be in charge of handling our migrant crisis.
Oh, those Penn State guys, I wanted them to wrestle the migrants. I told, the UFC, Dana White, they killed me in this. I told Dana, to set up your League of Champions, unbelievable, best fighters in the world, and a migrant league. At the end, I want the migrant to go against the champion, and I think the migrant might actually win. That's how nasty some of these guys are.
A migrant league. He's so serious about the migrant crisis. I love the white guys behind him with hard hats, as though there's anything underneath their skulls worth protecting. Well, while campaigning in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania yesterday, Donald Trump picked up an endorsement from the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 91, representing all the police in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania, except Pittsburgh. I love this police officer who's about to speak. If I'm a woman or a person of color or a member of the LGBTQ community, I want to be pulled over by this cop at 2 a.m. because look at him. He takes such good care of himself. He's a rail. And look at the two other police officers working as his wingmen to support Donald Trump. These cops who support Trump, they're in such great shape. They're going to chase after a suspect on foot and not fire first because they're in such excellent shape.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Solanowski. I'm the president of Fraternal Order Police Lodge 91. We represent all the departments in Allegheny County, aside from Pittsburgh, which is Fort Pitt Lodge 1. Thank you. I'm here to say that our lodge is joining in with the National Lodge, which represents over 377,000 officers across the country, with supporting and endorsing Donald J. Trump for president.
Great. And why? Why are you endorsing Donald Trump, Officer Fabio? Tell us why.
In the past, Donald Trump has proven himself to be a supporter and friend of law enforcement all over this great country.
Yes, he supports law enforcement. And don't take my word. Ask the 140 cops who were rushed to the hospital after January 6, or the families of the 6 cops who ended up dead. Yeah, Donald Trump is a huge fan of law enforcement, as any convicted felon would be. And he's going to be keeping you cops really busy after he loses today. Campaigning in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Sunday, Trump told the crowd, "I won in 2020, and I should never have left the White House." Speaking in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Trump said, "It's a crooked country, and we're going to make it straight. We're going to make it straight." Yeah. At a rally in Lititz, Pennsylvania. Is that how it's pronounced? Lititz, Pennsylvania? Sorry. Lititz, Pennsylvania. I'm sorry. Le Fun Bags, Pennsylvania. Sorry. At a rally in Lititz, Pennsylvania, Trump mentioned the bulletproof glass he was standing behind, and then noted that in order for an assassin to get him, the shooter would have to first spray the fake news media with bullets, which he said, "I wouldn't mind that so much." On Monday, the Trump campaign fired a 24-year-old regional field director for Western Pennsylvania after Amanda Moore from Politico reported Friday he was a white nationalist. What a surprise! A neo-Nazi, an identitarian working for Donald Trump. Who would have guessed this? According to Amanda Moore, this guy Meyer, the 24-year-old regional field director for Western Pennsylvania for Trump, Meyer co-hosts a podcast with neo-Nazi Richard Spencer, who, remember Richard Spencer? He organized the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. Meyer appears on this podcast under the name Alberto Barbarossa. I guess that's because the name Pierre Delecto was already taken by Mitt Romney. Alberto Barbarossa. Amanda Moore quotes Meyer saying, quote, "Why can't we make New York, for example, white again? Why can't we clear out and reclaim Miami? I'm not saying we need to be 100% homogenous. I'm not saying we need to be North Korea or Japan or anything like that. A return to 80%, 90% white would probably be the best we could hope for to some degree." That's reasonable. When Amanda Moore of Politico presented Meyer with evidence that he was in fact Alberto Barbarossa, he told her he was relieved that he no longer had to conceal his true identity, that being a-hole. He wrote to her after his firing from the Trump campaign. He was fired on Monday, so he wrote to Amanda Moore, and he said, quote, "Like the Hydra, you can cut off the head and hold it up for the world to see, but two more will quietly appear and be working in the shadows. In a few years, one of those groypers, those are the white supremacists, they might even quietly bring me back in with a stern warning for me to be more careful next time," unquote. Be more careful next time. Don't let anybody know that you're a Nazi. Last month, Marjorie Taylor Greene blamed the hurricanes on Joe Biden. I'm not making this up. She said Joe Biden was controlling the weather with Hurricane Helene and punishing red districts that vote for Trump. Now, silly me, I thought it was global warming. And it turns out, according to Tucker Carlson, appearing on Steve Bannon's show yesterday, it's not Joe Biden punishing Democrats. That's not what's causing the hurricanes. According to Tucker Carlson, these hurricanes are caused by God punishing us for abortion.
If you're making the case that abortion is an affirmative good, you are evil, you're practicing child sacrifice. And that is exactly what they're doing, as every culture before us has. But to see the Treasury Secretary, that dwarf, Janet Yellen, get up and say, you can do your part to help the American economy by killing your child, that's no different than the Canaanites, actually. So if people who don't see that clearly, that's exactly what it is. Worshiping abortion, the killing of kids, not as something that needs to happen, unfortunately, but as something that is good, that's pro-abortion. People, and I have to say, I'm sure I'll be attacked for saying this, but I really believe it. People are like, oh, well, we had another hurricane, must be global warming. No, it's probably abortion, actually, just being honest. You can't do that. You can't kill children on purpose, knowing that you're doing that in exchange for power or freedom or happiness, whatever you think you're getting in return. You can't participate in human sacrifice without consequences.
But why do the hurricanes always strike the states with the most draconian abortion laws, Tucker? I think God is punishing Florida because they're not having enough abortions. That's what I think. Nobody's celebrating abortions. And I love the way he slips in that Janet Yellen is a dwarf. Loves women. Loves them. Absolutely adores them. You might remember last week Tucker Carlson told a Christian YouTuber that he was attacked in the middle of the night by a demon. I thought he would later say it was a joke, but turns out he was totally serious. He said he was awakened in the middle of the night with a demon clawing at him. He woke up covered in blood. Clearly, Tucker Carlson is not all there. Never was. But now he's not on network news and just left to his own devices, and his head is spinning. One of the uphill battles Donald Trump and the Republicans face this morning is they've alienated Christians. one of the reasons they've alienated Christians is they've gone soft on abortion. Trump is opposing a national abortion ban. The Republicans have alienated their core base of hardline Christian evangelicals. And they've alienated Christians who are actually Christian. You know, people who actually care about the poor and think lying and violence is wrong. You know, remember those Christians? Election denier Carrie Lake is running for Senate in Arizona, and the polls show her losing to Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego, sometimes in the double digits. Trump told her, if I lose, it's because of you. Here she is on the Pastor Driscoll show, bemoaning the low voter turnout for Christians this election cycle.
I'm curious to know why Christians aren't voting, because I sense in your church that people are voting, and it's because you've been talking about all of this for so long, but I don't understand, and I want to know why people tell you they're not voting as Christians, because I want to be able to talk to them on the campaign trail for the next week and try to convince some people.
Yeah, so part of it is there are some major Christian leaders, and I won't name names. Some of them used to be friends of mine, and I used to respect back when they had courage, and they've decided now to be cowards. But a lot of people, it is Christian leaders who are encouraging them to not vote and to avoid politics altogether. There are major Christian outlets like even Christianity Today came out recently, and they've really lived down to their woke, progressive, compromised name, which is tragic. And they're encouraging people not to vote at all.
Carrie, Christians are voting. They're just not voting for you. They're just not voting for you. This is the mop-up for November 5th. It's Election Day. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. Subscribe to this channel and my newsletter. And if you want to support me and this show, the best way is to share this episode. Forward the link to this episode through email, text messages, or on social media. Check out The Garbage over at shopdavidfeldman.com. Spend money you don't have on crap you don't need, like this worst case scenario mug. That's the map showing that Kamala Harris only needs to win the blue wall. That gets her to 270. Pick up a predator mug. Donald Trump has about 50 credible sexual assault allegations against him. Pick up a predator mug. It's going to be a tough Thanksgiving for your MAGA moron relatives. Get them a gift. Get them a MAGA cap. And because they're stupid, they won't be able to read what it says on the back, and that is low IQ individual. This is my favorite. It's Donald Trump in Edvard Munch's The Scream. And of course, if you want to disabuse me of the notion that I've cultivated a sophisticated audience, go buy my #1 seller, The Chef's Apron. You'll want this for Thanksgiving. It's a chef apron that says, I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. This is basically what everybody buys to hurt my feelings. You know, a lot of people say to me, David, where do you find all these clips? Well, I have friends who send me a lot of these clips. For example, I have a friend named Robert Smigel. Most of you have heard of Robert. And he sent me this clip of Donald Trump working hard for the money.
You're going to love Trump commemorative plates honoring my blue-collar tour leading to victory on Tuesday. These are plates like you wouldn't believe, preserving great moments and great jabs. Me and McDonald's. Kamala never worked there. Trump at the garbage truck. Kamala says you're garbage. And a few jobs I didn't get to in time. Trump as a plumber. Trump as a newsboy. Trump as a janitor. These are top quality plates. Trump as a gravedigger. Trump as a Hooters waitress. These are all tremendous, tremendous jobs. And finally, Trump as a Puerto Rican. It's not technically a job, but it could be. It's not easy being one of those people, believe me. Hard work. I love the Puerto Ricans and I love these jobs. And only 3 million of these plates exist. So go to you'llbuyanything with the word Trump on it.com. And let's get me out of jail. I mean, in the White House. It's Trump time.
That Robert Smigel, I don't know where he finds these clips. Well, a New Generation Lab poll. It's called a New Generation Lab poll of the 7 swing states shows Kamala Harris beating Donald Trump among young voters 76% to 24%. The well-respected Larry Sabato from the Center for Politics, his crystal ball is now predicting Harris beats Donald Trump with 276 electoral votes. Sabato is giving Harris the blue wall plus Nevada. He's giving the blue wall and Nevada to Kamala Harris. That gets her to 276. He says of North Carolina, Arizona, and Georgia, the one most likely to land in the Harris column is Georgia. Here are the Washington Post's final averages of the A-plus polls in the battleground states. Read them and weep, MAGA morons. Harris is leading in Pennsylvania, but it's tight. She's leading by 2 in Wisconsin and 2 in Michigan. There's your blue wall. That gets her to 270. She's also leading in Nevada by 1 point. That gets her to 276. What we're saying is what Larry Sabato, his crystal ball, is also saying, 276 for Harris. She needs 270. He's giving her Nevada, and the Washington Post averages show her winning in Nevada. The New York Times polling averages show an absolute tie in Pennsylvania, with Harris winning Michigan and Wisconsin. But here's where it gets insane. The New York Times polling averages have Donald Trump winning in Nevada, but the New York Times' own poll shows Kamala Harris beating Trump in Nevada by 3 points. The New York Times polling averages show Trump winning North Carolina by 1 point, but the New York Times' own poll shows Kamala Harris beating Trump in North Carolina by 3 points. The New York Times polling averages show Donald Trump winning Georgia by 1 point, but the New York Times' own poll shows Kamala Harris winning by 1 point. What's going on? The polling averages are being contaminated by a large swath of partisan polling units set up after the year 2000 to create the illusion that Donald Trump is more popular than he actually is. The Guardian's polling average shows Harris winning Michigan and Wisconsin, but according to the Guardian, Pennsylvania, according to the Guardian's averages, Pennsylvania is a dead heat. The Economist forecasts a dead heat in Pennsylvania, but is forecasting Harris eking out a victory with 270 electoral votes, right on the nose, that's what she needs, to Donald Trump's 268. The Economist sees Harris beating Trump nationally by 1.3 percentage points. Remember, 70%, more than 70% of Pennsylvania has not voted yet. The final Marist poll shows Kamala Harris up 2 points against Donald Trump in the key battleground state of Pennsylvania. Remember, more than 70% of Pennsylvanians have not voted yet. Even Steve Bannon is saying the ground game there is non-existent for Donald Trump. The final Marist poll shows Kamala Harris beating Trump nationally by 4 points among likely voters nationally. More good news for Kamala Harris. The poll shows Harris is leading Trump among voters who consider themselves undecided, but are leaning towards a candidate. That's what a lot of polls are showing in the final 48. The undecided are breaking for Harris. More good news. While the Marist poll shows Trump winning the white vote, Harris is doing better among that demographic, among white voters, than Joe Biden did 4 years ago. Harris has a nearly 30-point advantage when it comes to non-white voters. We are also seeing men shifting from Trump over to Harris. Trump only now has a 4-point advantage when it comes to male voters, but, and this is incredible, among female voters, Harris has an 11-point advantage. Trump and Elon Musk is saying, get out there and vote, men. We need you to vote. Trump has a 4-point advantage nationwide with male voters. Kamala Harris has an 11-point advantage with female voters. How do you think this is going to break if women vote? And I showed you that poll on the last show where 1 out of 8 female voters in America have lied to their significant other, told them they were voting for Trump but voted for Harris, because if they're voting for Trump, they're abusive men and you can't tell them you're voting for Harris. So this is different from 2016 when Hillary was running. First of all, back in 2016, nobody thought Trump could win, so a lot of voters stayed home. More importantly, 2016 was before the Me Too movement, which didn't begin in 2017. It went nationwide in 2017. The Me Too movement started in the black community years ago. It was appropriated by white women in 2017. Kamala Harris will owe much of her victory to this woman, Arana J. Burke, founder of the Me Too movement, which she created in 2006. Born in the Bronx, like my father, Burke studied at Alabama State University and became a community organizer. She created the term Me Too. She created the movement in 2006. It took a tweet from the actress Alyssa Milano 11 years after Burke coined the Me Too phrase for that term to finally catch on. In an interview with the BBC 4 years ago, Burke said she doesn't believe Milano hijacked the Me Too movement from the black community. Burke said she's met with Milano and appeared with her, adding, quote, "People didn't know who I was, and people still don't know who I am. What do you do with a 46-year-old black woman from the Bronx who's not polished, who doesn't look anything like even a black woman in Hollywood?" Burke told the BBC nobody would know who she is if Milano had not drawn attention to the cause as well as her. Burke told the BBC there is a connection between the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter. She said, quote, "What we need to be talking about is the everyday woman, man, trans person, child, and disabled person. All the people who are not rich, white, and famous, who deal with sexual violence on an everyday basis." That is Arana J. Burke, the founder of the Me Too movement. It's very easy to get ahead of ourselves right now, get too excited. The Des Moines Register's blockbuster poll Saturday shows Kamala Harris beating Trump in Iowa. That was a gut punch for the Trump campaign. Larry Sabato, in his final assessment, the crystal ball earlier, he said Iowa's new 6-week abortion ban may have activated the sleeping female giant inside Iowa. Remember, that's a state Obama carried in 2008 and 2012. I want to thank a lot of my listeners. After that poll came out, they left comments saying Trump is weak in Iowa because the tariffs he imposed on China back in 2018 and 2019 set off a trade war that punished Iowa farmers. You might remember China responded to those tariffs by purchasing its soybeans from Brazil and Argentina instead of America. I remember a lot of us back then said this was a form of election interference on the part of China. China was targeting Iowa. They wanted to punish farmers in order to punish Trump politically during the 2020 Iowa caucuses. Didn't work. He won the caucuses as well as the state of Iowa in the general election. But the New York Times reported yesterday that it got so bad for farmers during the Trump administration after the tariffs. By late 2019, the Trump administration was subsidizing Iowa farmers because the trade war, the tariffs on China, ended up punishing them, our farmers, so drastically. By July of 2020, Politico was reporting that federal farm aid reached an all-time high, and it reached an all-time high under the Trump administration. When Trump took office, farm subsidies were $11.5 billion. By 2020, his last year in office, farm subsidies tripled to more than $32 billion, and that was just halfway through 2020. A couple of things going on here. Out on the campaign trail, Donald Trump is promising to eliminate the income tax for close to 100 million voters, and he's insisting the shortfall will be covered by tariffs. Tariffs, he lies, are paid by foreign nations, he says, like China. Now, most Trump voters are stupid. That's why they're Trump voters. They have no idea what a tariff is, so they believe Donald Trump because they watch The Apprentice and actually think he's a successful billionaire. But farmers and farming communities are not stupid. America prides itself on being the breadbasket to the world. Trade wars punish farmers. It makes it impossible for our farmers to feed the world. Our farmers don't want subsidies. They don't want government handouts. They don't want government handouts because Trump doesn't know what the F he's doing. They want to grow their crops and sell them to the world. That's what our farmers want. These farming communities are also a little bit on the conservative side. And they want our government to live within its means. They don't like entitlements. Some of them don't like a safety net, which means they don't like being on the receiving end of subsidies. My listeners first drew my attention to why Harris is leading in Iowa. They say it's because of the farmers and the tariffs, so thank you. Now, the Washington Post reported on Monday that Trump threatened 100% tariffs on Mexico. He said 100% tariffs on Mexico yesterday if it doesn't close the border. He's already promised 20% tariffs on all imports. Farming communities know what that means. It would be the height of irresponsibility this morning for me to tell you Iowa will flip blue and vote for Harris the same way it did for Obama in 2008 and 2012. Biden, you might remember, abandoned Iowa this year by making South Carolina's primary the first contest for the Democratic nomination instead of the Iowa caucuses. It used to be Iowa was first in the nation for the Democrats. Now it's South Carolina. There was no campaigning in Iowa for the Democrats. Perhaps absence makes the heart grow fonder. People of Iowa were inundated with Republican candidates like Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, and of course Trump. Maybe they're sick of Republicans, especially Trump. Voter turnout for the Iowa caucuses was horrible. Granted, so was the weather. But Trump turned on the evangelicals in Iowa before the caucuses by saying he opposed a national abortion ban. And he said he believed in exceptions. He also said Florida's 6-week abortion ban is too rough. Iowa has a 6-week abortion ban. That's why the governor of Iowa endorsed Ron DeSantis. So Trump's got maybe a problem with Iowa voters. You got your 6-week abortion ban in Iowa, thanks to Donald Trump's Supreme Court overturning Roe. Women in Iowa are going to turn out. And Republicans can't win Iowa without the evangelical get out the vote machine, which, from what I've been hearing, has abandoned Donald Trump. They're angry with him for saying a 6-week abortion ban is too rough, and he doesn't want a national abortion ban. So will Harris win Iowa? Will she win Nebraska? Now there's talk that she could win Nebraska. Well, if this is what they call a change election, that's what we saw in 2008, then I have no idea. If you believe that decency still counts in America, if you believe that women will be flooding the voting booths today, if you believe that there are more decent than indecent people in America, then I suspect there are untold riches awaiting Kamala Harris later tonight. My country has done and still does horrible things around the world and to its own people. Our foreign aid per capita is among the lowest in the industrialized world. But I know this country. More of us are decent than indecent. That's why Donald Trump can't win the popular vote. That's a given. He didn't win it in 2016, he didn't win it in 2020, and he isn't going to win it again. I believe there are more decent than indecent people in America. It's why Trump lost to Joe Biden by 7 million. He's probably going to lose by 11 million this time around. I also believe there are more decent than indecent people in Pennsylvania, where this election could be decided. I also believe there are Republicans right now in Pennsylvania who do hate Kamala Harris. I know there are Republicans who think abortion is murder. I know they believe that. And they don't believe there should be any exceptions. I also know there are Republicans who think Trump doesn't mean what he says. I also know there are Republicans in Pennsylvania who believe it's time to take a wrecking ball to the whole system and punish the smug and hyper-educated liberals who think they know everything and what's best for everyone. But I also know that around 73% of Pennsylvania hasn't voted yet. And of the 73% of Pennsylvanians who haven't voted, there are Republicans who haven't voted yet. I think there's decency floating around somewhere deep inside those Republicans who I disagree with on pretty much everything. I think there are a lot of voters, Republican voters in Pennsylvania, who wouldn't mind seeing Trump become president again. But they're just not going to be able to find the energy to wait in line today and vote for him. I think a lot of Trump supporters, I think a lot of likely Trump supporters in Pennsylvania are just not going to make it to the polls today. Again, more than 73% of the vote in Pennsylvania will be cast today. There's been early voting and mail-in ballots, but more than any other swing state, Pennsylvania depends on who's going to show up today. Deep down, I think there are a lot of Trump supporters, who tell the pollsters they're voting for him. But deep down, when it comes to getting in the car, going down to the polling precinct, deep down they know this is not the America they want to live in. That's why I'm so optimistic. The polling looks great, but I have faith, and I do. I have faith in this shithole we call the United States of America. I know that there are more decent people here than indecent people. Like I said, she's going to beat him by 11 million, 10 million. We know that. Biden beat him by 7. Trump is outnumbered. And he's also outnumbered in Pennsylvania. There are people in Pennsylvania who hate me, and I want nothing to do with them. But one thing we can all agree on when we watch Donald Trump is this is not the America we want to live in. On Sunday, panic began to set in with the Trump campaign. Trump's chief pollster, Tony Fabrizio, damn it, his name is Tony Fabrizio. It's named after an air freshener because Trump stinks. Tony Fabrizio sent out an email to the Trump campaign staff claiming both the Des Moines Register poll showing Harris winning Iowa and the New York Times poll showing Harris winning the blue wall, plus Georgia, were all part of a voter suppression campaign to dampen enthusiasm among Trump voters. Tim Alberta has a piece over at the Atlantic Monthly website where he reports that the Trump campaign is in free fall. And Tim Alberta, by the way, is a conservative. According to Tim Alberta in the Atlantic, Trump is playing all his campaign aides against one another. He brought in old advisors like Corey Lewandowski and Kellyanne Conway, Mother of the Year, Kellyanne Conway, and he brought them in to just keep everybody off center because he's an agent of chaos. So everybody is going crazy because he thrives off that. Patrick Dillon is married to Kamala Harris's campaign manager. He took to Twitter to retweet the Tim Alberta piece in the Atlantic, and that prompted Trump campaign spokesman Stephen Chung and male underwear model. Stephen Chung, the Trump campaign spokesman and male underwear model, Stephen Chung, there he is. Stephen Chung accused Dylan's wife of cheating on him. This is their go-to. This is how Stephen Chung, the official Donald Trump campaign spokesman, responded to the Tim Alberta piece being retweeted by Patrick Dillon, who was married to Kamala Harris's campaign manager. Quote, "Cuck husband of Kamala chairperson has no idea what he's talking about because he's used to not knowing what's going on behind his back," says Stephen Chung. Stephen Chung would no woman would ever cheat on Stephen Chung. He knows exactly what's going on behind his back because he asks the person who has to wipe his ass every morning, has this guy ever wiped his own ass? And then, where are we going here? Patrick Dillon, the husband of Kamala Harris's campaign manager, tweeted back at Stephen Chung, "Hi, Stevie." This is the husband of Kamala Harris's campaign manager. "Hi, Stevie. Usually my faith says to forgive the maternal failure or brain disorder that caused you. But you get an exception. You malformed, swollen, infected testicle. No one's ever loved or respected you. No one ever will. And not deep down, you know you deserve it." Yeah, it's election day. It's November 5th, 2024, election day here in the United States of America. American politics in the modern age used to come down to fear versus hope. Bill Clinton always said, vote your hope, not your fear. Republicans would scare Americans. They would scare us and then say, but don't worry, we'll take care of you. And Democrats offered hope for a better tomorrow. But then Donald Trump came around and introduced something new into political discourse: hatred. Thanks to Donald Trump, hatred, which has always been there, but hatred was a subset of fear that the Republicans promulgated. Nixon ran on law and order, and underneath that was the fear of crime, right? Fear. And a subset of that fear was hatred for black people. And of course, hatred for young Americans who were protesting in the streets. Reagan ran on fear of Russia, fear that our economy was going to collapse under the weight of all this entitlement spending that he railed against. And underneath that fear was a subset of hatred, of racism, hatred for the welfare queen that Reagan would talk about, hatred for black people and minorities, but he never admitted it. It was just fear. Trump elevated the subset that it was hatred right beneath fear. He elevated hatred, and made it equal to fear. Hatred has become its own category, right up there with hope and fear. And now today, Americans are voting their hope, their fear, and their hatred. There are Republicans, and this is why Trump is going to lose. There are Republicans out there who just don't hate enough. They just don't have enough hatred inside of them. And Trump offers no hope, and his fear is counterfeit. And Republicans know that. At least a majority of Republicans know that the fear he's selling is fake. What he's offering is hatred. Now, there are Republicans, not a majority. There are some Republicans who genuinely hate Democrats. And there are Democrats who genuinely hate Republicans. I've always said this hatred is partly due to it's now the only acceptable hatred. It's politically correct to hate somebody for their political beliefs. You can no longer hate black people, Hispanics, Jews, Arabs, women, gay people, but you can hate Democrats. That's acceptable. And hating Democrats is pretty much the same thing as hating blacks, Jews, Arabs, Muslims, women, gay people. But you just say, I hate Democrats. It's politically correct to say, I hate Democrats. It's politically incorrect to openly hate the various demographic groups that make up the Democratic coalition. And this is why Kamala Harris is going to win. Because Trump only offers hatred. He's not offering hope. And the fear he's running on is bogus. Now, I get it. Some of his supporters hope he deports all 14 million undocumented Americans. They hope he gets rid of the income tax and replace it with tariffs. But how many genuinely believe he's going to do that? He already had 4 years, and he didn't. But there are some Republicans who will vote their hopes. He's trying to run on fear, but we all know, and the Republicans, the majority of the Republicans know, it's fake. He's talking about this marauding caravan of migrants. Some believe it's true and fear the migrants. He's trying to scare everyone, running on the fear of rampant violent crime, but violent crime is at record lows. Yes, he's done a good job, along with Fox News, convincing low information voters that it's dangerous out there, but it's not real. It's not a real problem. Violent crime is not a real problem. So yes, Donald Trump can get some people to vote their fear, some people to vote their hope, but the vast majority of Republicans who are voting today are voting their hatred. They don't care what the truth is so long as it upsets Democrats and destroys this country. I don't think there's a ravenous appetite out there for this type of hatred. I'm not saying Trump hasn't been wildly successful making hatred a winning message, but elections are won on the margins. And there are more Americans today voting for Harris because there's a larger pool of Harris supporters voting their hope, their fear, and yes, their hatred. There are more reasons to vote for Kamala Harris than Trump supporters have to just vote their hatred. I'm going to assume most Harris voters won't admit it, but they hate Donald Trump. They're voting their hatred for him. They're voting their hatred for Trump, his enablers, and their supporters. I think the hatred for Trump is more animating than the hatred Trump is trying to create towards migrants and liberals. I think on the hatred front, he's outnumbered. As for fear, I think more Americans, more Democrats than Republicans are going to be voting their fear. We're afraid that we're going to lose our reproductive freedom completely. They're talking getting rid of no-fault divorce, same-sex marriage. We're afraid that our planet is going to be turned over to the oil companies and the entire executive branch will be looted by MAGA grifters. I think we're more afraid. We're voting our fears more than Trump supporters are voting theirs. And then there's hope. Trump voters are hopeless. They have no hope. And they're voting. They're not voting their hope. We're voting our hope. Hope to expand reproductive freedom throughout all 50 states. Hope that there's time to reverse the ravages of climate change. And hope that Kamala Harris will bring peace to Gaza and continue to give Ukraine the weapons it needs to defeat Donald Trump's benefactor, Vladimir Putin. Simply put, there are more of us than there are of them, especially in Pennsylvania. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. If you're listening to this show, I don't have to remind you to vote. I know you're going to vote. And I know you're going to drive somebody to the precinct, to the voting precinct. I know you're going to help one person vote today. I know that. Thank you for listening. Please like this episode. Please share it. Please subscribe to this channel. Please subscribe to my newsletter. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. I read all your comments. I cannot thank my listeners enough for your comments about the Des Moines Register poll and its relation to the tariffs. So thank you. ShopDavidFeldman.com. Pick up. Go to ShopDavidFeldman.com. I got to do better selling this shit. Pick up a worst case scenario mug, a Predator mug, a MAGA moron cap with the words low IQ individual on the back. What else? I love this one. I love this. It's Edvard Munch's The Scream. It's Donald Trump in Edvard Munch's The Scream. And I hope you don't buy this. It's the chef's apron with the words, I hope you're in the mood for diarrhea. Okay, I don't think I'm doing a show Wednesday morning at 2:30 a.m. I'm going to enjoy tomorrow and do a show early, I don't know. In 48 hours, I'll do a show. Maybe I'll do a show tomorrow. Thank you. I'm not going to play this. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you. I'll see you in 48 hours. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe.